The days of when you used to post your dog and what you're eating and all of that stuff to the feed, it doesn't exist like it does now anymore, because the majority of that stuff that we post to the feed is a little bit more tailored. We're aiming, it's aesthetically clean. We're posting there with specific purpose of and a specific goal, as you should. But we also have other options now on where we can post a little bit more of that authentic, a little bit more raw, behind the scenes content of our daily lives. And today we're discussing the top 3 IG priorities as shared by the head of Instagram, Adam Mosseri. If we focus on it in an optimal way, we can help increase our engagement and growth. You know, when I heard that information in regards to the feed posts, I was very surprised, because you always hear people say you should post 3, 4, 5 times. I've heard some people say you should post daily to the feed, and I don't agree with that. But still, there's still an importance on the feed. Like, it's the first thing that you see when you generally load up Instagram. And here we have the head of Instagram stating it's not even the first or the second most important area on Instagram. When you hear that, how do you react?
So my take on what he's really saying is important is about how many people are using these features, not necessarily like if you're going to grow from using these features, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And so the way that people are using them and the way, like, the depth of the connection that people have to one another, which will ultimately help you grow more and help you boost your overall engagement. So there's like different levels and ways we could look at this, but ultimately I thought it was surprising because, yeah, we are always saying, you know, post, show up daily, show up, you know, multiple times. And I do still have, I still teach that, you know, if you can show up more because you have it batched and scheduled and planned and you have a strategy, then obviously the more you can show up, the better, but it's not worth burning out. It's not like, you're not going to get that much more benefit for burnout, right? So definitely your health is way more important.
Yeah, definitely want to avoid the burnout. Something I've actually started doing, or a new belief that I've had, even before I heard him speak in his podcast, but him speaking in his podcast kind of strengthened my belief, was the whole idea of, I kind of changed my whole viewpoint on feeds. And this was probably at the beginning of the year. I kind of noticed that it wasn't as important as it used to before. Like, people are telling you should post all the time, but when you really think about it, everybody was using the post to kind of direct people to other places on Instagram. I figured that from looking at the viewpoint like that and how the audience is using it, I started to use the feed in 2 different ways. I use it for awareness and reach, and that was specifically by posting a lot more reels than any other format to the feed. Now, I did that so I could actually build a new audience. I've always said, even back in the day, I look at reels like commercials, and it's just like a 30-second or less way to market yourself or your account to people that are not familiar with you. But then in the other aspect is the nurture and empowerment aspect. And what I used for that was the carousels, because it was a great way to spark a conversation, get the communication going in the comments, and then hopefully even still take that conversation elsewhere, maybe private, whether it's in a DM, or lead them to somewhere else on Instagram, or even somewhere off of Instagram if I want them to pay for a service or something. So I use it in those 2 different aspects, where it's one, I use Reels for awareness and reach, and nurture and engagement is where I use the carousels. With this new information about feed posts, Alita, are you changing anything about the way you create content?
No, because I'm similar to you. Like, I just started posting reels again because I kind of was giving my community what they wanted, but I was like, I want to reach new eyes. So of course I'm going to tap into reels, and I love them. So for me, it's similar. I use reels to increase my visibility, to get my reach out there more, but also provide the value. And I'm heavy on the carousel post, but now I want to start implementing back into my strategy the infographics, where I can give enough information where it's not too much, but it gives you something you can save and utilize for the benefit of your business.
Pretty much the same, because the way that I create content it's a good steady flow that I have of how often I show up. I create 1 to 2 like solid feed posts or carousel, like infographic style, a week, and then reels about 3 or 4 times a week. And that's just from my batching strategy and whatever it is that I'm working on at that time. But that being said, it has helped me re-strategize the other areas we're going to talk about here on the other 2. So it definitely has helped me really focus in on the other things that are more important. So number 2, the second place on Instagram to pay attention to if you're looking for more growth and you're looking for more engagement is Instagram stories. It is the second fastest growing area of Instagram. And it's always been a really popular place ever since it was released. It's something that has just helped us show up in a very different way than our typical feed posts, right? So something that he said that I thought was really, really interesting is the reason why people like stories so much is because it's a conversation starter. It's a place where you can slide into their DMs without feeling like it's creepy. It's not a cold random message. You're really responding to something that they already chose to put out there. And the examples he shared was kind of like if you were going off to college and you saw somebody else was going to that university as well, like you can respond to their story, or if you were, trying to get on a date, it's easier to respond to a story than it is to randomly text someone. A great way to connect with other businesses and for your potential clients and customers to connect with you without being that creepy cold message, right?
That's a great way to put it.
So it's kind of like you're sliding into the DMs without having to slide into the DMs. It's a great, it's like stepping stone there. That's just a little less creepy. So I personally, I'm obsessed with stories. I love doing stories. I love the fact that it has the variety. It's less structured. However, I do still believe there needs to be some form of strategy behind stories. That's a whole nother subject for another day. But it's just an easy place to connect, right? Like it's a fun and also purposeful place. I use my stories a lot to show my behind the scenes, but I also use it to connect deeper with my audience and just be a little more real, show them more variety than just my business.
So for me, I do a little bit of mix. Everything is tailored to the business. So that doesn't mean that I don't share behind the scenes. I don't get on video sometimes and give a couple of tips, but everything has a purpose. I'm not just sharing it to be sharing it. So on my stories, you get a little bit of me. You get a lot of fitness, leaving at the gym, like little selfies and stuff. But those are all tied to motivation. It's tied to your mindset and building your confidence and things like that, which ultimately help your business grow. And then, of course, I have ones where I give tips to lead you more towards an offer. But my favorite ones are like interactive polls, because when I get your answer, we can really take that conversation to the DMs and have a little fun. So
I love it. Definitely.
I feel like I'm still growing with IG stories. I have a love-hate relationship with IG stories, and I love it for all of the reasons that you guys just shared. But there's so many things that I'm discovering with stories that just really decrease your reach. And I think I shared a few with you, Megan, and it's like sometimes it's the smallest things, like some of the stickers. You should use engagement stickers, but not all are created equal. And when you use some, I've noticed that they actually bring down your reach. Music sticker is one of them. When you add the music sticker, I've noticed that brings down your reach. And it's like, well, now I have a great song in my head I want to apply to the story, but I don't know if I want to actually take that risk that it won't reach more people. So I'm still fine-tuning my way. As you said, Megan, there should be a strategy. I fully agree with that. One of the things I plan to do with this information now is I want to use the close friends feature and use that with IG stories. So I can actually create stories specifically to my clients that are part of my close friends group. And that's something I'm looking forward to start doing next month.
And with stories, something that is so important, what Alita, you were saying, how, you're using those engagement stickers, those polls, and then getting into the DMs it's just a great way to have conversations starting and really feel less creepy and feel like you're just hanging out with your friends, right? It's just, I think it's so fun. Stories are by far my favorite.
So we already know it goes down in the DMs. I don't care what they told you. And that is the number one way to grow your business, and grow your engagements, to build an engaged community, to get to know your target audience on a deeper level. I am 100% fan of what he said when he was saying that people are sharing more videos and more feed posts to somebody through DMs. It makes sense. If I see something that I like, or somebody posts something, I'm going to naturally send it to somebody who I like. I'm not going to post it to my stories. Somebody's going to pop in my head. I'm going to send it to that person. So when he said it, that's the first thing that came to my mind. So for me, it was like, oh, I love the DMs because we're going to have a conversation. I'm going to get to know you. You're going to get to know me. And I use the DMs in various ways. I don't use any mini chats, nothing like that yet. But I love the personal connection with my community. So when he said it, I was like, I'm with you. I'm here with it.
Yeah. DMs for me, I'm going to be real honest. I get overwhelmed with my DMs. Heston, you know this. Sometimes they're like, hey, Come on. I'm like, sorry, I gotta catch up. But it's a place that really, like, every single time I do take that time to sit down and go through them, I never regret it. I love the DMs. It's such a fun place. I love that you have the variety of being able to text or voice or video. You can send so many different types of media. And Alita, what you were saying, where you're sending things to specific people, actually, if you create a collaborative saved folder, I don't know if you guys know this, but it actually gets sent to them in a DM. Every time I save something to that folder, they get a DM of that post. And so it's really cool because it's like that conversation starter, plus it helps, get everything in one place in your DMs. I love that you can also search your DMs now. Like if I'm in a chat with you for X amount of time, I can go in and see more and see all of the stuff we've shared with one another, and be able to organize it in a way, like all the media, which I think a lot of people are using in different ways, not just businesses and brands.
I agree. I think they've really done a great job with DMs. And, I want to read out a couple of things that he actually said in the podcast. I want to make sure I state this. One of the things that Lita kind of alluded to, and it bears repeating, there are more photos and videos shared in DMs than in the IG stories. And then on top of that, there's more photos and videos shared in IG stories than in feeds. That kind of just shows you where the balance of attention goes right now on Instagram. It is about private messaging. The days of when you used to post your dog and what you're eating and all that stuff to the feed, it doesn't exist like it does now anymore, because the majority of that stuff that we post to the feed, we have to admit, it's a little bit more tailored. We're aiming, it's aesthetically clean. We're posting there with specific purpose and a specific goal, as you should. But we also have other options now on where we can post a little bit more of that authentic, a little bit more raw, behind the scenes content of our daily lives. We do that in the IG stories. And then we're now sharing a lot of that with DMs. The other thing that he said was, and this is really important, to pay attention to where the teens are using a lot of these platforms, because they technically influence a lot of what happens on all of these platforms. And he stated teens spend more time in DMs than they do in stories. That's why they're putting so much emphasis on the DMs. He even said during the podcast that he took off the team from IG stories, that creates IG stories, and he made them join the DM team, which that in itself tells you where they're putting the resources. So us as marketers, as content creators, and strategists that focus on our livelihood is on Instagram and social media in a way, we have to kind of recognize where Instagram is going and putting their attention, because that's where ultimately we should be putting a little bit more of our presence as well. DMs, I definitely agree and see why it's number one in regards to growth for Instagram.
Something to add to think about this as a whole, right? Like we just went over those 3 areas that have the most importance for growth right now on Instagram, meaning the way that users are like actually hanging out on this platform, they are using those different features in that order. As brands, as businesses, we have to understand that we still need to pay attention to the top of that funnel, right? In order to get things shared to people's stories, in order to get things shared in the DMs, we have to post, right? So we have to post to our feed to have these things shared. I shared a quote a couple of days ago, and I'm still amazed that people are getting content shares on stories like crazy. Today I had over 40 shares on the stories from other people of this post that was posted like 5 days ago. And that's incredible for reach. You think that, so as you're creating feed posts, what I'm trying to say is when you're creating these things, what would people want to send to other people in the DMs or on their stories? How do you want to share your message, right?
Absolutely. There we go. Awesome.
Tie it together here.
Absolutely. Make sure you're utilizing all 3 of these areas and putting a little bit of effort behind all of them, because I think that's the best way to kind of win with what you're trying to do in regards to your goals on Instagram. Like I always like to say, take a lot of these strategies that we just shared and step your gram up in the best way possible, and you're sure to see a lot of that growth and engagement from following a lot of these strategies. I am actually going to ask everyone here in the audience, because I thought it was really interesting during that interview when Adam was saying that feed posts are the 3rd, if that, of importance. He said something very interesting of most people don't even post to their feed at all. Like it's really something that people neglect, and people are posting to the other areas much more. So curious, everyone here in the audience, do you guys post on your feed on a regular basis? Do you have a consistent schedule you post, or are you
kind of showing up whenever, and it's no real strategy. Let us know in the comments if you're showing up consistently or, yeah, not really.